I know I promised to do a video on how we set about encountering FIRE, which is financial independence, retire early. You might have heard about it in various places. It seems to be a very popular topic, and there is a movement that has been going on for quite a few years now about FIRE. My FIRE journey wasn't actually intentional. I fell into it. And I'll tell the story in like two parts, probably like pre husband and post husband. When I got out of college, I was very footloose and fancy free. And I spent my money as fast as I could get my hands on it because I really didn't have any family or anybody. So I only had to worry about myself. So I went to school in Boston, and after college, I bought myself a little zippy sports car, and I was spending money. My favorite store was Neiman Marcus. I still remember that. And I would always buy all the suits. And there was a pharmacist that I worked with, and he always laughed at me because he said, "Why do you buy these suits for like $900 to $1,000 when you come to work and you have to change into a lab jacket?" And one day he told me, "You know what? Enough with this mindless spending. Come tomorrow. I want you to call the HR department and request a form to join a 401k, the company 401k plan." I had no idea what that was at that time. And, I always listened to him because it was old and wise. So the next day I got the form sent to me and I filled it out, and I had the maximum amount of money taken out of my paychecks. And, out of sight is out of mind. So I never thought about it once I adjusted to not having that money. So I was having them take out the maximum, and the company was matching at that point, I think it was 6%. So that was how I started saving money. And so for me, it wasn't a big deal at that point because, like I said, I wasn't really consciously trying to retire early. As the years went by, the money accumulated and it became a little substantial. At some point, when I moved to Los Angeles from Boston, I wanted to buy a house, and I couldn't afford it even on my own with the balance that I had in my 401k. So I had met this guy. He was my friend, and he had moved from Philadelphia. He was also a pharmacist, and he wanted a house as well. And neither one of us could afford it. And he also had a 401k. So in order to cash in that 401k, which is the cardinal sin that you're not supposed to do, you're not supposed to cash in your 401k retirement plan. You can borrow against it, but not cash it in. But we wanted to cash it in because, one, we didn't want to have to repay it and then still try to save. And two, we were still young at that point. I think I was 27 or 28. So I figured I had enough time to like start it up all again. So we joined our money together. We quit the company that we were working for and got the payout. And we used the money to pay a deposit on a house up in the Hollywood Hills. And we loved that house. And we had come in, we bought just at the right time because there had been a housing recession there. So we purchased at a good time. The house we bought was worth like 175,000 more than we paid for it, but because they were desperate at that time, and the guy who owned it had moved to Switzerland or something. So he was willing to sell, and he knew our story that we were young and we didn't have much money and blah, blah, blah. So he took a hit on the house that he was willing to, but he had had it for so long. And there were some things to be done to the house, but it wasn't in bad shape or anything. We were able to live it in without fixing anything for the longest time. So once we had the house, of course, we built up equity in that one. And I started working for another company. And so I started the 401k up again. So a combination of that, we sold the house 8 years later. And so we made a profit on that. We split up because he wanted to buy a house, move in with his partner, and they wanted to live like in another part of Los Angeles. So I took my share of the profit and I used it to put down a house, a payment down on another house, only like a mile away from where I had been living because I really liked the area. And so building up equity in the second place also helped me save some money at that point. And also that was around the time when everything was still going well. Everybody was buying a house. This was around 2000, like the money was free flowing. People could get loans and all that. And I was investing in like stocks, but I really didn't do like um, long-term holding. I bought Apple and sold it when it was double or triple my money, and I was very happy. And of course that was kind of stupid looking back now, because I have a friend who kept his shares, and let me just say I get really upset every time I talk to him, and he's like, guess how much it's worth now? And it's like worth a crap load of money. But I thought I was doing so well. I mean, I believe more in Oracle and Qualcomm and all those companies that have disappeared, basically. So not all my decisions were great ones, but overall, I did make a little bit of profit. And even after the taxes were paid and everything, it worked out well. So that helped as far as having a little bit of money. And so when this whole thing came about where the recession started, actually, I should go back a little bit. Around 2008, when everything collapsed, and I got affected too, and it was just a terrible time. But what can you do? You brush yourself off and you start building again, which is what I did. I still had the house at that point, and actually I had a second house. I had sold that first house for profit after 4 years and moved into another house, which was like 20 steps away from where I'd been. So that was pretty funny because I kept saying, oh, I'm going to move to another part of Los Angeles. And, but I just couldn't. I liked the hills. I liked the neighborhood, and I stayed there. And I was like the poor person on the street, but I was rich from like profit, but I would put the whole profit on the next house, and I put the whole profit on the next house after that. So when I started really thinking about saving, what happened was my brother was living in Houston at that point, and he asked me to help him buy a condo. And I thought, okay, sure, why not? How much do you need? And he said he needed $25,500. So I'm like, okay, I'll send it to you. And then later on, I was asking him, so how much is the place? Thinking that was like a 20% down payment. And the house was going to be around, 150, 120, something like that. So I go, how much was it? How much is the house? I mean, the condo. And he said, 25,500. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, like, I couldn't even get like a closet for that in Los Angeles. And he's like, well, that's how much the condo costs. It was in a working class neighborhood. It was 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bath. It was a duplex. And that was the first clue. Like, it opened my eyes, because I was like, I can't believe that things are so cheap elsewhere. I thought the prices would be like Boston, where I came from, which is like really expensive. And I thought it was going to be like LA prices, which was also very expensive. So I was really shocked, to say the least, about the price. So after he bought the condo, I went to visit him, and that kind of sowed the idea in my head that maybe I should start investing in things outside of Los Angeles. So I had him look for me for another condo like his. And even though I didn't have much money at that point, I wanted to get an idea. I thought maybe his was just a fluke, something like that. But we kept it simple. We focused on a working class neighborhood that, just regular people could be able to afford the rent. And the HOA fees weren't that high, and he could look after it for me. So he found a 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo. And I want to say it cost about just under 30,000, like 29,000 and change, something like that. So I got all my money together, saved for a while, and I was able to buy that and rent it out. And that's how it started. And I started thinking about maybe this might be a way for me not to have to work till the traditional retirement age. And I remember always at work, I'd been telling them for so long that what I wanted to do was to, like, get money together and retire early. Not retire early, but I wanted to travel. And they always knew, because every time I had a vacation, I was off to London or whatever, Spain, I just wanted to get away. And so it was already in my mind at that point. And so when I started thinking about buying outside of there, like in Houston, that's how that started. And so I met my husband, I think a couple of years after that. I had bought the second condo. And, I told him what I was doing. And luckily for him and for me, he was really on board with it. And he was like, I've got some money saved up. So I promptly took his money and invested it in another condo. But he was totally in on it.